A fortnight had passed,
and the envoy sent to invite Pasipamire to Lobengula's court had nearly reached their destination, Kwabulawayo. The members of the court were skeptical, since that night when the huntsman whispered to the king and gave him a package from Pasipamire, the king had been very secretive. He was shut tight like a baobab fruit. His court kept in the dark. For some reason, Lobengula was determined not to share any details of his plans regarding Pasipamire, so much so that he did not even let them see the package Pasipamire had sent to him as the tribute. The Ndebele Council was much like a modern-day government, in that it was the authority in the kingdom. It was comprised of representatives from all three social classes of the Ndebele nation: the Zanzi, the Entla, and lastly, the Hole. Now everyone in the council had gathered. Lobengula began to address them. Members of the council, I have gathered you here to discuss the issue of Pasipamire, the medium of Chaminuka, and the future of our great nation. As you are aware, I sent an envoy to escort him here. This very day, he will arrive at my doorstep. And because of this, I feel that the time for secrecy is over, and it is time for all to be revealed to you. The king raised Pasipamire's mirror for the council to see. This is the tribute Pasipamire sent to me. This instrument is of great value. It is the key to Chaminuka's power and the most precious thing to young Pasipamire. Sometimes, the only way to win against an unbeatable adversary is to turn that adversary into a friend. These are the words Pasipamire sent to me through the huntsman. And my people, these words could not be more true. I find that there is great wisdom in these words. In situations such as these, the solution lies in peace and not in war. As king, all the actions I take are for the benefit of our kingdom. As you are aware, our most famous spirit mediums, Mapansula and Mamlambo, proved to be powerless against the boy. They were cowards, trying to hide their uselessness through trickery and deception. They insulted me, and so I had them put to the spear. However, I remember before their deaths, these cowards kept saying that Pasipamire was a godobori, a medium with exceptional gifts. They said he could see things across great distances, like a scavenging vulture, and that his ears are more powerful than an elephant, such that he can hear every word whenever people speak of him. At that time, I took this information to be the ravings of two cowards, and so I showed them that lies cannot shield a man from an assegai. But after all that we have learnt about Chaminuka, I became more inclined to believe that perhaps it is true what Mamlambo and Mapatsula were saying, for it would certainly explain why it seems Pasipamire is always 2 steps ahead of me. It is because of this that I decided to keep the information and details regarding my plans for Pasipamire to myself. I waited until the very last possible moment to tell you, because now, even if he does hear of my plans, it is too late for him to make any sort of counter to what I have planned for him. Let it be known now that I, Lobengula, intend to make Pasipamire Tsuro, the medium of Chaminuka, a king under me, and to effectively turn Dungwiza into a regal kingdom of the Ndebele. Lobengula continued with his grand speech. He spoke of the land in which they were settled. The climate in Matebele land is hot and dry, and although it was adequate for livestock, the land was poor for crops, and so the Ndebele people's yields were never quite enough, and that is why they had depended on the grains paid by tribute by weaker tribes. Our dependence on tribute has been the reason why I must punish those who do not pay severely, because if more and more tribes choose not to pay, surely our people would face hunger. Our inability to be self-sufficient in producing grains is our one true weakness, and through Pasipamire, I intend to eradicate this weakness. It is well known that Dungwiza has become a grain-producing powerhouse. Not only are their farmlands vast, they are fertile and are on flat terrain which is easier to farm on, and they receive the best rains, a phenomenon that many attribute to the presence of Pasipamire the rainmaker. I believe if our farmers can also farm in Dungwiza, we will have success and finally be self-sufficient. After that, all the tribute we'll collect would just be surplus for our people. No longer we will dread how to feed our massive army and our ever-growing population. If we succeed, even in times of drought, we shall be food secure. Loche, one of the king's more outspoken Indunas, posed a question to the king. O wise King Lobengula, your plans for our future are not only honorable, but they are excellent. However, it is known to us that the boy Pasipamire lacks the key qualities needed for one to rise above his standing and rule as king. He has no royal blood. In fact, he lacks relatives or an army to support his claim to the throne. Again, the boy is poor in material wealth. He has no cattle or livestock. Neither does he farm. He lacks the wealth required to maintain the throne. And more importantly, he doesn't even have a desire to rule. From what I have personally confirmed, the only thing he desires is his mbira. How then can we make such a person king? With a smile on his face, Lobengula assured his court that he had already made plans to ensure that Pasipamire would agree to all of his terms. All they needed do was sit back and observe. And with that said, the members of Lobengula's court dispersed to go about their business as they waited for the arrival of Pasipamire. Later in the day, ululation was heard as the women of Bulawayo welcomed back the king's envoy, which had brought with them a special guest, the young medium, Pasipamire. The envoy along with Pasipamire were received well and welcomed into Lobengula's kingdom. Lobengula had prepared a bira, a feast done in honor of the spirit mediums. Lobengula had spared no expense. The African traditional beer, umqomboti. The beer flowed without end, and there was enough meat searing on top of the fires to feed an entire nation. As a gesture of goodwill, Lobengula gave Pasipamire his mbira back, but only for the night. Pasipamire was asked to play his mbira for the king and the crowd at the bira, to which Pasipamire readily obliged and plays a series of symphonies along with the drummers and marimba players of Matebeleland, much to the pleasure of everyone in attendance. Pasipamire, being a peace and fun-loving person, was impressed by the bira held in his honor, but little did he know that the conniving king, Lobengula, had carefully picked each and every guest at that bira, a task he did with extra care. Pasipamire's bira would go on for many days, and Pasipamire soon felt the language barrier between himself and the Ndebele-speaking people at the bira. Except for the royal class, no one else at the bira spoke Shona, such that Pasipamire needed a person to translate for him, since he could not speak the language of the Ndebele. But on the second day, Pasipamire came upon a beautiful maiden who caught his eye. The young medium approached this girl, and much to his delight, she happened to be one of the few people at the bira who could speak in perfect Shona. The young maiden told Pasipamire her name was Bevya. The ease of communication drew Pasipamire to Bevya, and in these days to follow, the two would grow closer and closer, Pasipamire spending most of his time in Bulawayo along Bevya. Within those few days, a seed of love had already taken root, and a love was blossoming between Pasipamire and Bevya. Due to his mostly solitary lifestyle, Pasipamire had never considered romance much. He was focused on music and nature, the things he loved most. The young Pasipamire had never been in love. Bevya was his first love. The young maiden had already cut deep into Pasipamire's heart. And so, for the first time, Pasipamire now loved and desired something new, and he quickly found himself desiring Bevya more than anything else. Bevya told Pasipamire her story and how she wound up in Lobengula's court. With tears in her eyes, Bevya told young Pasipamire how her beauty had become her own curse. Before, she lived an ordinary life among her own people in the highlands of Shurugwi. There was a drought, and their village was unable to pay tribute to Lobengula. Fearing reprisal, the men of the village ran to the mountains to save their lives, leaving the women behind, hoping the Ndebele would not slaughter unarmed women. Although it turned out to be the case, the Ndebele were not willing to slaughter unarmed women. Unfortunately, they gathered the women and proceeded to choose the girls they thought were most beautiful, and Bevya was amongst the few chosen. And although they were not harmed in any way, the girls were given to Lobengula, who adopted Bevya out of the group to be his ward and to live within the king's court. Bevya had since lost contact with the other girls she was taken with and had not seen them in years. She told Pasipamire how, even though she had a good life in Lobengula's court, deep down she felt like a slave because she could not leave. She longed to leave Bulawayo and to be free. Bevya told Pasipamire that her only wish was someday to be able to go back to Shurugwi to reunite with her family. With every secret and every sad story Pasipamire listened to, it seemed to intensify his love for Bevya. And on the 5th day of the Bira, Pasipamire was entirely smitten, so much so that he would have done anything to save Bevya and free her from the long and oppressive reach of King Lobengula. As soon as Lobengula saw that Pasipamire was now entirely smitten with his ward Bevya, he quickly ended the days-long Bira and summoned Pasipamire to his hut. And there, Lobengula and Pasipamire would sit down together and talk man to man for the first time, with no one else around. Lobengula was not one to beat about the bush, and opened by telling Pasipamire certain circumstances about your gifts pointed to the possibility that you may become a grave threat and danger to my kingdom. And so, I sent assassins to end your life. I realize now that I was wrong and mistaken, and I misjudged your character. I do hope that we can put this issue behind us and go from enemies to being friends and allies. Pasipamire quickly assured the king that it was all water under the bridge, and that he too hopes all parties can move forward in peace as friends. Lobengula said, "From what I now know about you, I understand that you care a great deal for the people of Dungwiza, and from the message you sent to me, I can see that you have the heart and mind of a king." Pasipamire remained quiet as he waited to see exactly what Lobengula was trying to say. "I would never attack kingdoms I consider to be my friends. And also, I will come to the aid of my friends. I will never allow them to fight alone without support. And more importantly, I would not charge any tribute to my friends. In Dungwiza, you have been able to pay tribute consistently for the past few seasons, and still have a surplus. Members of my court are starting to believe we must increase the tribute quota that Dungwiza must pay in order to avoid bloodshed. However, if our kingdoms do become allies, then there would be no need for you to pay tribute. Your people can finally enjoy or the fruits of their labor. Also, Dungwiza is rich in grains and livestock, but you lack any discernible army to defend your own wealth. Dungwiza will soon become a target for many. Other small struggling kingdoms and villages will attack you, and you need a way to defend your wealth. I, as king of the Ndebele, can provide you that security. Just my name will act as a deterrent. No one will ever attack Dungwiza if they hear that that kingdom is allied with me. Lobengula paused as he waited to gauge Pasipamire's response to what he had just said. Pasipamire responded, "Indeed, you make a strong point on why friendship is a beneficial thing between your kingdom and Dungwiza. What I don't understand is why you would be discussing such things with me, for I am just a simple man. The king of Dungwiza, Mutepe, is the person you should be discussing such issues with." Pasipamire was calm and composed, and showed no fear for Lobengula, which was not common, because Lobengula was used to talking to submissive people. "I am discussing these things with you, because I find that Mutepe is a corrupt, short-sighted, visionless and stubborn fool. I cannot work with him in this vision of peace and mutual development and prosperity for our peoples. That is why I have chosen to discuss this with you. I believe you to be the next king of Dungwiza, and for us to be friends, we must be on equal standing. A king can only befriend a king. As such, for us to be friends and avoid bloodshed, you too must be king. My only condition is that as king, you will allocate enough farmlands to my farmers so that they too can grow crops in the rich plains of Dungwiza to sustain my kingdom. That way, my kingdom would not require a tribute of grains from your people. And if you accept my terms, because I am a fair king, we would be allies, and I will give back your ancestral Mbira. During the Bira, I witnessed you and my ward Bevya get along very well, and I have seen that you care a great deal for her. Every king needs a worthy queen. As such, to strengthen our bond, I will allow you to marry Bevya. Though she was not born into my family, I have great love and concern for her well-being. She may not know, but in my eyes I see her as my own child, no different from my other daughters and sons. However, Bevya has been in my care since she was very young, and she has grown accustomed to the lifestyle of luxury and wealth. My concern is you do not have the means to provide such a life to my beloved ward, and so I will give to you a horse to travel with and a herd of cattle, goats and sheep, for the worth of the African man lies within his cattle. I will provide you with servants to herd your livestock, servants to till your farms and work in your household, and to provide the security and protection you and Bevya will require." The two men sat quietly for an extended period of time, Pasipamire trying to contemplate the potent implications of the bombshell which Lobengula had just dropped onto his lap. Lobengula waiting to hear Pasipamire's response to his proposal. It was undeniable that Lobengula's words made a lot of sense. A chance for a stable and long-term peace within Ndebele, immunity from paying tribute, and a chance for better cooperation, which indeed would accelerate the development of both Dungwiza and Matebeleland. Pasipamire was heavily inclined to take Lobengula's offer. He wanted to agree to Lobengula's terms immediately for Bevya's sake, not only because of the advantages such an arrangement would bring. In a humble and respectful way, young Pasipamire asked Lobengula for the night to think his proposal through. Lobengula agreed to this, saying, "But you must have an answer for me tomorrow in the morning." That night, Pasipamire went to visit Bevya at the girl's lodgings, and there he would discuss everything with her. Bevya pleaded with him to accept the king's terms, and it was decided that night Pasipamire would accept Lobengula's terms. The only thing that worried Pasipamire was how Lobengula planned to make him king, while there was still a king alive in Dungwiza. The next morning, Lobengula and Pasipamire met again. Pasipamire told Lobengula that he would accept Lobengula's friendship and take on the crown, but on one condition, that there must be no bloodshed in the process of making him king. Lobengula agreed to this, and the two men shook their hands in acknowledgement of the treaty they had just made. Lobengula was pleased with himself, having set up Pasipamire to fall in love with his ward, all things having gone according to his plan. But as the king relished in his success, little did he know that his arrangement would soon bring calamities that would bring him to his knees.